Good morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding on the Pash Vayelach. We're holding the sixth portion. Today is Friday. We're holding on chapter 31 in the book of Deuteronomy, verse number 20. This week's portion happens to be the smallest portion, I think like 40 verses, even less than that, in the entire Torah. When I bring you them to the land which I swore to their forefathers to give to them, Zavas Cholov Dvash, a land of flowing of milk and honey. V'achal v'savai, and they will eat and be satisfied. V'doshin, ufan, and they will live on the fat of the land. And they will turn to other deities, to other gods. And they will serve him. And they'll provoke me. And they'll violate my covenant. So Rashi says, what means v'na'atsuni? V'na'atsuni, they will provoke me to anger. Atsuni is anger. Similarly, any mention of the word ni'utz means anger. Verse 21, it will be when they'll encounter many evils and troubles. This song will be as a witness against it. The fun of La'aid. They'll be as a witness. That it will never be forgotten from the mouths of their offsprings. Here Torah makes a promise that even though whatever will happen throughout history, the Torah will never leave the Jewish nation. There will always be Yidden that follow Torah mitzvahs. For I know their inclination, with what they do, Hayom today, before I even brought them to the land, which I made a promise. The Rashi says they'll remember the song, that is, I have warned them concerning all the things that are befalling them. So it's not going to be any secret to them to why they're going through this. Consequently, when they read this song, they will not be able to claim, had we known all the evils that befall us, we would never transgress, because they know the song. Rashi says this is a promise to Israel, that the Torah will never be entirely forgotten by their offsprings. The Torah makes a promise that Yiddishkeit will never disappear. It'll never disappear. Through all the good and the bad, Yiddishkeit will stay. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote this song by Yemahu that day. He taught it to the Jewish people. Yitzav is Yeshua, and then he commanded Yeshua, and he told them, Chazak be'ematz, take strength, be strong and courageous. You're going to bring the Jewish people to the land, which I made a vow to them. And I will be with you. So Yeshua, this refers to above verse 16, where the subject is that the Shekhinah, that God is the speaker, is evident from the use of the first person to the land. Tzav is Yeshua, that not what you're saying, what I'm saying. That as it says before, that I will bring them to the land which I swore to their fathers. And it was when Moshe Rabbeinu finished writing the words of this Torah scroll, I'll save it on a scroll, until its very completion. And that completes the Chumash for today. And I'll go to the Tanya Day. We're still in the middle of the 20th letter of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining some beautiful stuff in Chassidus and Kabbalah. how everything comes down, how the traveling of the upper worlds, how they ultimately come down into this world. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining Sfiras HaMalchus in depth, the concept of Malchus, the concept of kingship, and the aspect of why we need a Melech. That's also one of the reasons why we need a Melech, saying Tasam Alecha Melech. The aspect of kingship, because in Lamaila, in the upper world's kingship, is a concept of revelation. Through the concept, Ein Melech B'lo Am, there's no king without a nation. And a nation means entities that are far from him. And that's Reivam Hadras Melech. So we have the more people, the Am, the more foreigners come part of the nation, the more is the glorification of Malchus, the aspect of Malchus. So now the Alter Rebbe goes even further in the aspect of Malchus, and what we should understand what Malchus means. What is the concept of Malchus, and how important is Malchus? How important the concept of Malchus is to us, to each and every one of us, and to the world at large. The Alter Rebbe says, now we understand the terms of the Sfiras and the corresponding letters of the divine name. So yes, mitzvah ha-mitzvah b'malchus. Why mitzvahs are in Malchus? The latter hey of the four letters of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So that's because that's where the expression of godness happens in Malchus. And therefore mitzvahs are considered in Kabbalah Malchus. Because why? Because mitzvahs are in this physical world. I do a mitzvah with a physical thing. So that's why it's the expression of the last letter hey, which is Malchus. We explained that also in many times in the previous aspects in time that Alter Rebbe explains that hey, Achreina, the last letter Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud Hey is Chachma Bina. Vav is the 6 minutes, and Hey is Malchus of Shem Havai, Yud Hey Vav Hey. So Malchus, aspect of Malchus is the last Hey in God's name. And that last Hey has many, many expressions to it. One of it is mitzvahs, because mitzvahs is in the physical world. That's where we show that God is king over us, when we do every mitzvah. When we do every single positive commandment, and we don't do any sin of the 365, that's where we express Malchus. That's where we express God's kingdom. How else can we express God's kingdom? It is that God is king over me, and therefore I do everything he says, and I do everything that he says I shouldn't do. I don't do it. So that's where we express God's kingship. But the Torah, who is Zeir Anpin. Torah, the concept of Torah is in Zeir Anpin. As explained, Torah is Chachma, which is in Vav Shel Shem Havaya. In Kabbalah, it's in the Vav, in Yud Kei Vav Kei. Kam Shelamayla Ba'arech Anpin Amitzehem Begilgulta. Levun is, even though in Kabbalah, though on a higher plane, mitzvahs and Torah are found in the level of Kesed, not a Malchus and Vav, and Arech Anpin. In way, it's in Kesed, in the crown of God, in Ratzin of the Eibush, right? We actually call mitzvahs. Remember, the Alter Rebbe spoke that Torah is Chachma of God, and mitzvahs is the Ratzin of the Eibush. So that's the Ratzin of God. It's found in Side Torah and mitzvahs are found in Kesed in before higher than in essence than Shem Havaya. It goes into the concept of the Ratzon of the Eibishter, which is higher than any name. So a mitzvah Gulta, meaning the skull that encompasses the Meichin, more specifically in the width, in the whiteness, in the level of Chesed of Galgalta, Chesed of Arech Anpin. Which again, these are all Kabbalistic terms, which shows on the way mitzvahs are even higher than the way God comes within a name, even within the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Meaning the path, that's what's parting of the spheres, literally the hairs, which divide into 613 paths, effusions of the Torah as their Zerampim. So they have the concept in Kabbalah again, that's the concept of the hairs that we have on our head. And they're a very spiritual thing, and that's why they also explain that the hair that hair by a man, is the aspect of vanity, so to say, and by a woman, it covers the hair, etc. Because it's very deep, and that's why that's a separate issue. That's why Chitzonius can connect to the hair. Very interesting. In Torah, a man shouldn't have long hair really, and a woman needs to, if she's married, needs to cover her hair because it shows them even though what's here? Here is something we cut away. Here is something that what is it? But it shows on a concept even in the world on something that is vain because it has such a high daiga. It's so high, the concept of hair, that it has the capability of consanguineous to be attached to the other side, to be clippers, to be attached to the concept of hair. So here in Kabbalah explains the aspect of hair in a Kabbalistic way, which the mitzvahs are encompassing a level galgalta. So the mitzvahs are the galgalta, the skull, which is higher than chachma. That's why it's called kesed. It goes higher than the aspect of wisdom, which is symbolic in the hair, and which goes to a very high level in spirituality. The Torah comes from the anafkim chachma. Torah comes from the wisdom, ilah, the high level of wisdom, mechachmas tima, which is the hidden level of the hidden level of wisdom. Through the ultimate rise to the roots, which is lost in the supernal chachma, the arach ampin, chachma Torah mitzvah, which is the wisdom underlying the reason of command. So the concealed chachma of arach ampin that utterly transcends comprehension contains the wisdom underlying the reason of the commandments. These reasons will first be revealed when revelation of concealed mercy, and that's you'll have to wait till Mashiach comes, for when then we revealed true chachma. Right now we learned in Tanya, we're getting chitzonius chachma, we're getting the outer expressions of chachma. We're really not getting the inner aspects of wisdom. And so far, the Torah mitzvah are rooted in kesed. That's really what the Alter Rebbe wants to say. All these Kabbalistic terms is thus to bring out one concept, and that is that we see in Kabbalah that mitzvahs are rooted in a very high level, an extremely, extremely high level. That's why nobody should evaluate what a mitzvah is, because whatever we can come understanding what a mitzvah is far from the truth of the purpose and the meaning of this mitzvah, because the mitzvah is rooted in kesed, which is in the rotzen of the Eibishter, which is above and beyond comprehension. The mitzvahs are a higher plane than Torah, because Torah comes into a comprehension, and then the mitzvahs are above. Mitzvahs never come into a comprehension. Torah is rooted in concealed chachma, the level of meichen of kesed, while mitzvahs are rooted in galgalta. Galgalta is the crown. It's like the galgalta is your skull. So what's the difference between your skull and your brains? Your brains is encompassed by your skull. Your skull is above your brains. And in Kabbalah, that's the concept. The concept of Galgalta, the skull, shows us something that's higher in a way than the brains. So it's Mitzvah Galgalta comes to a level of kesed that transcends even Meichen. That's the greatness of Ratzin. That's what Chassidus says. Torah is compared to Meichen, but it is Meichen, the wisdom of God, which is compared to Lechem, which is something you digest. Mitzvahs are Ratzin the Eibishter. Mitzvahs are the Ratzin of the God. It's above and beyond comprehension. It's higher than even Torah. So mitzvahs are something that you surround yourself with. You don't eat a mitzvah. Besides, if you're doing a mitzvah that encompasses eating. But in general, mitzvah is something you surround yourself with. You do something with something. You put on film on your arm. You light a candle. That's something that's out of you. Because you cannot consume it even. You cannot even take it within you. Because it's so high. The concept of mitzvah comes from such a high level of spirituality that it's above you. And the truth and the true understanding of every mitzvah, whichever we understand or we think we understand, in every mitzvah we do, is really chitzonius. It's really an outer expression. The true of every mitzvah will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Why then is we standing within the spheres, within the corresponding letter, 4 letters, name of God? Torah is lofty in the mitzvahs. So now in the other place in Kabbalah, we just started off this part of Tanya, is that Torah comes from the letter Vav of the name of God. And mitzvahs come from the letter Hey. So that's seemingly like an opposite. Torah is higher in the name of God. And the mitzvah is the last letter of the name of God, seemingly lower in the name of God. So the letters in the name of God, Torah is loftier than mitzvahs. For mitzvahs are situated in Malchus. And a corresponding final letter, hey, the name of God, or Torah is in Zeir Ampin, Torah is in Midas, and corresponding to the letter Vav of the name of God. This question which Alter Rebbe announced. However, it's like inverted seals. Stamp of an engraved seal leaves an impression which is the exact opposite of itself. Alter Rebbe is giving the seal of a king, right? He seals something. So they used to do these seals with kings. He used to pour something like a plastic, like a wax on. No. He used to peel wine, and then he used to take the ring, and they used to stamp the ring in
molten gold.
Oh, molten gold, whatever. So they used to put it in, and then they used to put the seal. They used to put the seal in it. So now whatever was on the ring came out on the seal, but opposite of the seal, because the seal was sticking out, and this was sticking in. Right, because the right to left, and left became right. Whatever protruded became indented, and whatever indented became protruded. If you had a seal that was inside, the seal was engraved in, so you put it in, it came out. If the ring was sticking out, so whatever you pushed in, it came in. So it's called chasum hamasapechas, inverted seals. So too, protruding the superior level of mitzvahs in Kesed transcends by the meaning of nostalgias within the spheres as an indented or a lower manner, while the indented or the lower level of Torah descends within the spheres in a protruding or loftier manner. The Alter Rebbe goes back to its original, what he started before. And the beginning is wedged in the culmination. So therefore, the beginning is wedged in Malchus. So even though Malchus is lower, but the beginning is wedged in Malchus. The beginning of the superior level of Kesed, which is the mitzvahs, are rooted and descends, and it is wedged in the culmination of the lowest level of the spheres of Malchus. So now to that, which is what we already answered before. It's Mesapechas. It's called an inverted seal. So what comes higher goes down lower, and whatever comes from higher, it has the total opposite effect. So therefore, in essence, the king's seal is rooted in and is wedged in Sfiras HaMalchus. It's sealed in the level of Malchus, which is lower. Because ultimately, you see that Malchus has the capability of creation. Out of all spheres, out of all the manifestations of godliness in Kabbalah, Malchus has the capability of creation, not all the other nine before. Only Malchus. So therefore, we see that Malchus, the attribute of kingship, has the power of Ein Sof. So it's something for nothing. But I explained above, the power of Keser is vested in Malchus. And not by the way of Ilaval, by cause and effect, which happens through the other Chachma until Malchus. It's all cause and effect. Even Chachma causes Bina, and Bina causes Chesed, etc., etc. They're all cause and effect. Because in those ways, would be encompassed by its Ilah, the cause, and essentially non-subsistent relative to it. Such a manner of creation could not possibly fulfill the divine intent of creation. Ilah, cause and effect would not have caused creation, because it will always be connected to the cause. And if the cause is infinite, then the effect would be infinite. Therefore, only Malchus can have only the concept kingship can have insight to be able to create something for nothing, which in essence is a fascinating thing, an explanation of Malchus. And Malchus is the aspect of kingship in the essence Sridus, in the 10 manifestations of God. There's no Malchus. If you look in the diagram of Malchus, Malchus is separate from all the other 7 or all the other 10. So it's like Kesed. If you look in the diagram of the Alter Rebbe, Kesed is on top. They have Chachma Bina Das, Netzach Chesed Gevurah Tiferes, Netzach Chai Yisayid, and Malchus. So Kesed and Malchus are two concepts that are one. Kesed is above, and Malchus is the total below, and that's why Kesed and Malchus come together. It jumps from Kesed. Kesed does not need to go through Chachma in a way. Kesed can jump straight. Kesed, the attribute of kingship, and Kesed, the crown, jumps straight to Sfiras HaMalchus. So that's why Malchus, the attribute of Malchus above, has the capability of creation. That's why we understand also, but in general, that the Malchus in this world is like the Malchus of the upper worlds. You have to make a bracha in the Torah on a melech. You see a melech or a malcha, you have to make a bracha because they in essence, even though they're human beings, physical human beings like anybody else, but they have the concept of a mitzvah like malchus dar. They make a bracha if you see a king. So I haven't made this bracha yet. Mashiach, come, we'll make a bracha. We'll see a king. So, but we'll make a bracha on a malchus, like aspect of kingship, because it has within it the concept of a mitzvah, a melech. Because it's straight connected to the Kesed HaMelech, it's straight connected to the Ratzon. So mitzvahs are straight connected to the Ratzon of the Eibishter. And that's why we don't. That's why general rule, mitzvah ain't tzich kavana. You know, even though you should have kavana in every mitzvah you do, but it really ultimately you don't need to have kavana because you need to have one kavana. You need to have one thought when you do a mitzvah. And what is that? I'm doing the Ratzon of the Melech. I'm doing the will of the king. And when you express yourself in that way, I'm doing the will of the king, and you understand what a king is, you don't have to have a reason. He is the king. The expression goes, it's good to be king. He is the melech, and therefore I do it. The Eibishter is my melech. So if I have an understanding of why I'm doing something, it's great. That's great. Imagine the king has asked me to do something and I comprehend why I'm doing it. But the truth is, I don't have to have any comprehension of why I'm doing it. I have to have the Ratzon. I want to do the Ratzon of the Melech. Actually, I want to express his Ratzon. I want to express his will. And by doing a mitzvah, I'm expressing the will of God. What can be greater than express the will of a Melech? What could be greater? There can't be anything greater than expressing the will of a melech. And that's the power of Malchus. That's the power of kingship, and that's why it's important to us, this. Because we're not going through a cause and effect situation. We are actually, by doing mitzvahs, we are we're jumping all kinds. We're going straight to Midas HaKesed. We're going through Malchus straight to the Ratzon of God. So the Alter Rebbe says, because if it was a cause and effect, but in such a way, the Yeshut should have been self-perception, an entity distinctive from the divinity. Today, who Melech HaKolim from, but that the blessed emanated can be king over all such self-styled separate beings. How does God become king? I can scream HaMelech today until tomorrow. How does God become my king? When I follow his will. If I have to understand everything that I do, then the Abish is not my king. Then he's like my father. I need to understand everything my father. The truth is, that's what you learn Torah. Because the Abish is also your father. But you have to also have mitzvahs. And mitzvahs express God's kingship. That's the way it is. So the way I want to express God's kingdom is by doing a mitzvah. By not doing an Aveda. It's only thereby that God desired to reign over created beings and fulfilled. You cannot do it any other way. You cannot say, I love the king, but I don't follow him. I believe in the king, but I don't listen to him. You don't know what a king is. Malchus needs to have that you follow it. That's the concept of kingship. That's why people don't like kingship in general. They don't want to follow, they don't want to be told what to do. Fully comprehend that. But by Yidden, by Jews, Kabbalah's El Malchus Shamayim. It's a very important thing to accept the yoke of heaven, to accept upon ourselves the kingship of heaven. That God is the king. Not only is the king of the world, he's the king of the Jewish nation. Not only is the king, he's my king. He is my melech. I explained above. His sovereignty can find expression only over creatures who are considered themselves to be separate entities from him. So that's the point. The point is, you're right. I am so far from God, I cannot comprehend God at all. But you know what? Even though I'm so far from spirituality, even though I'm so far from God, but he's my king. Why is he my king? Because I follow him. I do God's will. I don't comprehend him. He's far from me. He's in a palace. I'm in the gutter. But you know what? Doesn't make a difference. He's my king. And to prove that he's my king, I follow him. I do God's will. So where do we see this true concept? Not in Torah, because Torah can say, I have knowledge, look at this knowledge. I understand the Torah, I comprehend it, I love spirituality. And that's what we always love, spirituality to be loved. Because really, it's really selfish. Ultimately, all the spiritual knowledge can be very selfish. A mitzvah shows kingship. A mitzvah shows that it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about the king. It's about God. It's about God's will. It's not about my will. It's about God's will. And that's why a mitzvah expresses something much more loftier than even all the knowledge of the Torah you can have. If I have all the knowledge of the Torah and I don't do a mitzvah, then then the Abish is not my king. It's about I'm a king over myself maybe, and I live with myself. But God is not my melech, because I have not established him as a king over me. Very interesting. Who consider themselves separate entities, but who nevertheless nullify their will. And through their actual performance of mitzvahs, the safe ma'asav machshava tchila. Moreover, final act, it's also expression. Safe ma'asav machshava tchila. The question is asked. This is the question of why did God create man the last day of creation, the sixth day of creation? Adam and Eve were created on the sixth day. Why didn't God create them on the first day of creation? Why did God create man on the sixth day? So one of the answers is Seif Ma'asav Machshava Tchila. The last thing that he did, the Seif Ma'asav, the last thing that he did was the whole reason, was in his thought to begin with. The whole reason why God created the whole world is for man. So the Eibishter wanted a whole world to be there, so that man, and then he put man in the world. But what was the machshava? What was the thought in the creation of the world? Was man, even though man was created last. So too in the concept of mitzvahs. You're right, mitzvahs are the lowest letter in the name of God. Yud Kei Vav Hey in Kabbalah, mitzvahs is the letter Hey. but not Sklosim Seif. Seif Mais Machshav Tchila. The whole Yud, Hey, Vav, all these concepts in spirituality were all created for the Hey, that a mitzvah will be done. If a mitzvah is not done, then we don't have the Eibishter. Then the Eibishter is not a king of the world. We don't have Spirit of we don't have revelation of Malchus. You don't have the revelation of Malchus. There's no purpose in the world. That's why God promised us in this week, thus today, in the delay, that the Torah mitzvah will never go away from the Yidden. It'll make sure that there'll always be Jews that do Torah mitzvahs, because Chas v'Shalom, you'll stop Torah mitzvahs in the world. There's no purpose in the world. There's no revelation of Malchus. There's no purpose in the world. So the mitzvah that are performed in physical average was present in the beginning in thought. In the level of thought that trends even first divine Reishbach, within the sublime level, the divine intent, desire, and the fulfillment of those mitzvahs, which involve physical, that was the whole concept of all the spiritual worlds, and everything was all. So that a Yid will do a mitzvah, that I will do a mitzvah. And that's why the sages wrote in the Masechta Yerushalmi says, "Lest the Rab Shimon Shamasu Lulav." Is then Rab Shimon not of the opinion that one interrupts Torah study in order to fulfill the commandments of a lulav? Meaning, even Torah study defers to a mitzvah. Time for performance has arrived. When it comes time to do a mitzvah, I'm busy learning Torah. I'm flying high in the worlds, the spiritual worlds. I'm having a spiritual connection through my brain. I'm having a spiritual. No, you got to stop. And you got to take the lulav and you got to make a bracha on the lulav. You mean my spiritual journey is not more important than taking this lulav, this branch on my hand and making a bracha? The Gemara says, yeah. You got to stop all your lofty journeys and take the lulav in your hand and make a bracha. Sages asked the question in response to Shimon's earlier statement that he and his colleagues would not interrupt the study to even for Shema. There was the Gemara calls certain stages Terasim and Munasim, that their whole life was Torah study, and they would not stop for anything. The assumption was that whatever would be true of mitzvahs or lulav would also be true regarding the Shema. Jews and Talmud then goes on to differentiate between Shema and other commandments regarding interruption of one's Torah studies. It explains that both Shema and Torah study involve learning. So surely, however, Rab Shimon would interrupt the study in performance of particular mitzvahs in a proper time. Maybe Rab Shimon didn't stop to say Shema, which is a mitzvah, to learn Torah, because Shema is also an expression of words. And saying the Shema is a mitzvah, but it's a concept. What's the difference between learning Torah and saying the Shema? Assertion by the Rebbe, and even Torah study itself proposed the prior performance of mitzvahs, but they are beginning and on them dependent of very existence. As in the forthcoming analogy on the relation between the afterbirth and the child. Okay, we'll have to wait till tomorrow to understand what exactly the Rebbe is saying over here. I'm sorry. Jews and Talmud whoever learns with the intention not to practice, it's better for him that his afterbirth turned over. That means he wasn't born. And he would not have been born. Why did Jews and Talmud relate that to the afterbirth instead of simply stating it would be better for him not to have been born? Why did he have to use that expression? For the afterbirth was formed first by the seminal drop. He levada isika vlad that meyem, which is chilus of vlad. And until 40th day, we know that we had the first 40 days when the embryo begins to take on a form. It alone was the essential substance of the embryo, this drop. Kocha mitzvahs, so too the manner, the commandments, are the essence and the root of the Torah. Even though the commandments is corporal and the Torah is wisdom, so how can you say that the mitzvah is the source of the Torah when the mitzvah is physical and the Torah is spiritual? Because the mitzvah has within it the real reason. The mitzvah has within it the real reason. Searching by the Rebbe, this does not raise a problem. As the concept of the Torah relative to mitzvahs for the reason explained above, using the analogy of the inverted seal. So in essence, even though everything has its place, everything has its greatness, Torah has its greatness, and mitzvahs has its greatness. The power of a mitzvah is, even though that ultimately comes into a physical thing, that's really the struggle. The struggle between Torah and mitzvah. We struggle with this always. What is more important? Torah or mitzvahs? You have the argument in the Gemara. Torah or mitzvah? Torah or limud or ma'aser? What is greater, learning or action? And the Gemara answers, limud. Learning is greater because it brings to action. What does that mean? That the action, really in the limud, in the learning is the action. If the learning doesn't have action, then it doesn't make sense. Then it doesn't make sense to learning. If I learn only for the sake of learning, then there's no purpose in the learning, because the action is in the source of the learning, is in the essence of the learning. So too, in the concept of the analogy of the child, in the birth of the child is already the droplet, the drop that the father gives is already the purpose of the birth. So even if that's what the Gemara says, if a person learns not to do a mitzvah, the better that he is after birth. What's the expression? It's better for him that his after birth turn over. Meaning that because in the afterbirth is already the real purpose of his birth, but it was wedged in there to begin with. Not that you learn, so you should, and now you should do that. You're understanding it wrong. You're only learning to do. That's why it says limit. Your learning brings you to action. Why does learning bring a person to action? A person can learn and learn and learn and never bring himself to action. Why? Because he never learned for the sake of action. He learned for the sake of knowledge. He loved knowledge. Person can think knowledge itself has an importance. The Gemara tells us knowledge itself has no importance. Knowledge is the concept of action. The purpose of this knowledge is action. Limud meivilei. How does learning bring a person to action? When he learns because of the action. He's learning because he wants to change. If he learns because he wants to change, then the learning will affect him to change. But if a person learns and he has no purpose, just learning for the sake of learning, he can learn for the rest of his life. Nothing happens. That's why mitzvahs, which are lower than Torah in one way, but the truth is are wedged within the Torah. The whole purpose of the Torah is the mitzvah. If I'm missing the mitzvah, then I'm in essence missing what the Torah was given for. And Rambam expressed it in a different way. He said the whole Torah was given to make people better. To make you better. If the Torah doesn't make you better, then you're learning it wrong. Then simply you're learning this knowledge wrong. You have to learn the knowledge to begin with, to realize what the purpose of this knowledge. The importance of this knowledge is that it does make you better. And if you learn for that reason, because that's why the knowledge was given, that you would become better. To understand, that's the expression. Like the manner of the commandments are the essence and the root of the Torah. Even though the commandments is corporal and the Torah is wisdom. Because that's the whole wisdom. The wisdom is not there for wisdom. It is there so that it would come down into a reality. Except that the lofty standing of mitzvahs is an external market, while the other Torah exists on an eternal, and thus infuses the mitzvahs with vitality and soul. So, again, I'll explain below. So in essence, thus should a person study Torah and not intend to perform mitzvahs, is lacking the very root and the very foundation, not of the mitzvah of Torah. He's lacking the foundation of Torah. And it would thus have been better for him that his afterbirth turn over. That means if it would flip. If his afterbirth would flip and reveal why he was created, maybe he should have been, so that means after he should die, his afterbirth should turn over. His true beginning, his reason why he was created should turn over. He's lost into why he was created. He might think he was created for the sake of learning, when he should realize he was created for the sake of an action, for the sake of a mitzvah. And all his learning was there for the sake of a mitzvah, for the sake of a physical mitzvah. And that's the meaning. So we have many people, the Gemara in essence, who says, a person thinks that learning is the most important thing and not an action, then he should flip over. Then he should flip over his afterbirth should flip over, meaning he should flip over his true why he was created and why was he formed to the true reason of why he's here in the world. And maybe he'll come to the right conclusion. And the right conclusion is that learning is great. Learning is much higher. Learning is spiritual, while the mitzvah is physical. But the whole reason of why you learn, the whole reason why there's all spiritual worlds and all this knowledge and all this wisdom and all this godliness that we have in the world is all the sake that mitzvah you're going to do, that one mitzvah you're going to do, that one good deed you're going to do. That's why there's it. So that's why you have Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei, the first three letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei show really on the concept of wisdom and godliness through Torah. And the ultimate is the Hey, which is Malchus, which is the concept of a mitzvah. Because that's where ultimately everything lies. That's where ultimately everything is dependent on. That I do an actual mitzvah, I actually go and do a simple good deed. And I do this good deed, whether I comprehend it or whether I don't. And the more I realize that even though I'm doing the mitzvah that I comprehend it seemingly, but the truth is, I'm doing the mitzvah. Real reason is, I'm doing it, and that's what we say the bracha. Every mitzvah we say a bracha. Sheker Yishanu, the mitzvah v'tzivan. That God sanctified us with His commandments. It's a mitzvah. It's a tzivui. It's a command. I do it because it's malchus. It's the importance of accepting on myself the yoke of heaven. I'm being nullifying myself to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King. He's my King, and if the Eibush is my King, what I understand is phenomenal. But I realize I really don't understand. But I'm willing to do the mitzvah samelach. I'm willing to do the command of the King. That completes the Tanya of the day. Very deep concept. You should maybe read it a couple of times to get it well. And today is the 5th day of the month. which is chapter in Tillim is chapter 29 to chapter 34. Those are the 6 chapters of Tillim that you should say, and you accomplish the chitas of the day. Mitchum, tomorrow is Shabbos. You should continue the chitas learning by yourself, the Chumash, the Tanya, and say the Tillim self-understood. And Mitchum come together on Sunday morning, where we'll continue the chitas of the day and the new Parshas Hazinu. The second to coming to the end of the entire Devarim. We'll Mitchum in a couple of weeks. If the Yontif start Bereshis all over again. So what a beautiful, and continue to learn. The Neighbor should bless us that we should be able to continue to learn with each other for many, many years to come, and learn Torah and celebrate together, do mitzvahs together. And I wish you all a Gemar Teva, a good Geben Shabbos, Shabbos Shuvah, it's a Shabbos of repentance. May be may be all blessed with a Gemar Teva to have a wonderful, beautiful year.